2086 is an anime that I actually never heard of before until last year. I found out about it because I was looking up some obscure anime, or what people consider to be obscure animes, and someone mentioned this one, and I figured, why not? We can might as well watch something new. I mean, whenever I do these features, I always like to try and add something I never have seen before, or something I would like to see but just never got around to. So I figured I might as well give this a shot, and would you believe that this show is actually based after a TV show called ThunderBirds? Now, I never watched the TV show ThunderBirds, so if there's anything that's connected with this and that, well, I can't really tell you what they are. But as far as I can tell, it's a science fiction show. So with that being said, I decided to watch this one with an open mind like I always do. So first things first, let's talk about the story. So obviously you can tell from the title of the show the year takes place in 2086. And there is a rescue team called, well, the ThunderBirds. And all the characters that are a part of ThunderBirds are Warren Simpsons, Grant Henson, Dylan Beta, Callan James, Jonathan Jordan Jr., and Jesse Rigel, although of course there's a little kid named Skipper who's just really fucking annoying, but he barely does anything useful, so whatever. So what happens most of the time is that they end up saving people that happen to be stuck in space or some type of situation that involves around space. And of course a lot of the ways how they rescue these people is that they use a bunch of different vehicles, and usually they like to show off a new one every time. And then the Thunderbird team realizes that there's a bunch of man-made destructions going around, and the group of people that are doing this shit because they can is the Shadow Axis. So of course they have to investigate it. So that's the very basics of the plot of ThunderBirds, and well, it seems alright. And like I already said, I can't make any comparisons to the original show, so I don't know how accurate this is, or even if this thing is even trying to be like the original show, but I can at least say it's okay. Nothing great, but also nothing horrible. Now, even though I went into this not knowing anything about it, all I had to say was that after when I was done watching this show, the show was fucking boring. Now, after I finished watching the first episodes when they rescued the kids that were stuck in space, I wasn't really that excited about it, but I was like, okay, you know what, it's the first episodes, you never know, maybe it might get better. And to me, it didn't. It just kept on getting more boring as it went. I mean, even the characters are not even all that compelling. In fact, if it wasn't for me actually looking at the cast of characters, I would probably forget most of them, because it really just wasn't all that interesting. So before how I ramble on and how boring this show is, let's move on to other things, like the animation. Now with this show, it's kinda hard for me to tell if it was like good or bad animation for its time, because the video quality was not in the greatest quality. But as far as I can tell, it seems okay. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's also not like amazing either. But if I had to talk about like the designs of the vehicles that they used, meh, I didn't really care for them that much. So there's really nothing else I can say about that. And now as for the music in the show itself is okay. I mean, it's not like very memorable, but it's also not like the biggest piece of turd I ever heard. But as for the opening theme song, well, it doesn't really have an opening theme song. I mean, all the opening is has some music with some voiceover talking about saying, oh, the Thunderbirds, and doing this and that, blah blah blah. Which is fine and all, but I really can't say a whole lot other than that. But I guess for this kind of show it works, so yeah, I feel like being generous, I'll give it a pass. And as for the voice acting, well, it's pretty bad. But it's not the kind of bad where, you know, it's like really corny, cheesy, and just over the top of ridiculousness, and it just makes it really funny. No, unfortunately not. It's the kind of bad where it's just not memorable at all, and it's just bad. I've still heard worse than this, but it's still not saying much. And believe it or not, I couldn't find any info on who did the voices in this show. I mean, the only site I found that actually had some voices in them was the Wikia site for this. But some of it really did not seem right to me at all. I mean, I don't know about you, but I really don't think that John Belushi from the Blues Brothers actually played a character in this show. Because after looking at all the work that he's done, it was never mentioned in there, so I really have no idea how the fuck someone came up with that conclusion. Or maybe it was just uncredited. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I can't really seem to find any of the info on the voice acting anyway. So I really can't say much about that, but yeah, it still doesn't change the fact that the voices are just not even all that good. And now, as for the score, if I were to rate this one, I'd have to give it a 5 out of 10. Now, I would imagine that some of you people are probably really confused when I just say that, because, Not only was I feeling generous, but I actually didn't hate it. Now yeah, the show is very boring, it didn't interest me whatsoever, and I just almost felt like I wanted to fall asleep through it. And the show overall is really nothing memorable. So there really is not a whole lot of good things I could say about this show, but I'm giving it a 5 because, well, like I already said, I didn't absolutely hate it. I mean, yeah, sure, the show was pretty crappy, but at least it wasn't like a putrid monkey shit. And it also might be the fact that I never actually watched the show ThunderBirds, so I really didn't have a high expectation or a low expectation. But to me, it was boring, but it wasn't offensively bad like something like the Maple Story anime where that was just god-awful. I mean, I'd rather watch this than watch that. So obviously, this is not one of the worst things I ever seen, it was just, you know, meh. But if it had to be the worst at something, it would probably have to be the worst anime I've ever seen that was from the 80s. Because the truth be told, I've actually never watched an anime that was made in the 80s that I thought was completely crap. Now I'm willing to bet that there's at least a few out there, but I just haven't seen them yet. Or I don't know, maybe there's a lot of shows that a lot of people do consider to be crap that I happen to like. I mean, that happens. So with that being said, it's a boring show, and it is kinda ass, but it's forgivable ass.